Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host Gordo Gambles, and welcome back to another full card DFS breakdown, this time for UFC 277. Now, as always, I'm going to go over every single fight in the card, starting with my favorite targets, both underdog and pay-up options. But before I do, don't want to waste too much of your time, but I have to say, Dana White Contender Series is starting. Make sure you're checking out my Twitter at GamblesGordo to figure out what I'm doing, what kind of content I'm posting, and where I'm doing my weekly live stream. Me, Liam, and NarcoCop are going on weekly every Monday night at 10 p.m. EST, rotating all three channels, so I'm sure you'll see some videos on here shortly. We get an extra night of fights this week every Tuesday, and I'm absolutely loving it. Make sure to check them out and make some money with us along the way. But back to this weekend, UFC 277. Of course, you have the rematch, Nunes versus Pena, one of the greatest female upsets of all time. Going back at it in Texas this time. Again, Texas, something we've got to take note of when we're looking at decision fighters. But just a really interesting fight card. Let's use interesting as the word because there are some low-level matchups. There are some really fun high-level ones, but there's also some really low-level matchups where that may not be the best for betting. DFS-wise, we have this really unique opportunity to go out there and target both sides. Find the spots where these unknown fighters may have higher ceilings and go out there and make some money in the process. I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's get right into it. First things first, talk about my favorite play of the night. My favorite fight to target on the entire slate is going to be that Blood Diamond versus Cosce fight. That fight's going to be a really fun one. Typical classic grappler versus striker matchup. Going to be super fun. You have the striker and Blood Diamond, a friend of Adesanya, a guy with a kickboxing background, but only 4 fights. Very questionable ground game. And that was exposed last time when we had Wells go out there and take care of him in the very first round. This one's a bit different. Cosce isn't that same physical specimen that Wells was, but I'm sure he's smart enough to know he has to take it to the ground. The advantage on the ground is night and day for Cosce, and I know that as soon as he gets it there, he's going to have the grappling and the submission upside to go out there and exceed his value at 8.8k. Now, where things get dicey is he doesn't have the best cardio, and he isn't as physically strong, so if Blood Diamond is able to go out there and stop those takedowns, he has the clear striking edge. He has the ability to go out there and put Cosce's lights out. Cosce's only loss was a second-round knockout loss, to which he showed to slow down a bit. I think that if he can't get his grappling off early, Blood Diamond has the opportunity to go out there and take over. He's going to have the power advantage. He's going to have the striking advantage. I think that the longer this fight goes, it favors him. With that being said, this is all a really long breakdown just to say I'm targeting both sides. Both fighters have really insane ceilings this week because their win conditions are finishes. At 8.8k, you have the grappler who could go out there, get a first round submission, put up 110 no problem, with his opponent being at 7.4k, having the ability to score very well with a knockout win in his own right. That being said, super high volatility. One of these guys is not going to score very well. I think there's a finish really implied in this matchup, and neither of them have really high floors. Instead, they have high ceilings, and that's what you're banking on here. I'm taking from both sides. I really like to target this fight, especially looking towards the favorite here, Cosce. I think that his ground game is going to be a huge difference here, and I do think he gets Blood Diamond out of there early. All right, let's talk about the main event now. Amanda Nunes, Juliana Pena facing off once again. Of course, Pena got the better of their affair last time out, but it looks like Nunes is coming in there with a sharp mind and the will to win this fight. We know Amanda Nunes, she's the GOAT, she's the greatest female fighter of all time, and she's a finisher. She's a great DraftKings player because she goes out there, she finishes fights and puts up really good scores doing so. Usually she has this really hefty price tag, but at 9.2k this week, she's pretty playable. We all know her win conditions and early finish. She can definitely go out there and do that. Her ceiling is super high, and it looks like she may have more cardio and more heart to win the fight in later rounds this time. I think she's the better grappler, and I do think that she throws more power on the feet. Of course, you can't count out Pena at $7,000. She showed heart, she showed resiliency, and I do think that she has the ability to win this fight once again, but she's going to have to withstand a huge onslaught here. At 7k, she isn't as appealing as she was last time with an even cheaper price tag because she doesn't have the same floor. Amanda Nunes has a higher floor in this spot because I think that the win condition for Pena is taking it out to the longer rounds. I don't think she's going to go out there and starch a Nunes in round 1. She's going to take advantage of a more tired, weaker Amanda Nunes in those later rounds. I think it's up to Amanda Nunes to get out there early. She has a high ceiling, and I do think at 9.2k, you're getting that price cut that really leans me towards taking her in this fight. Either way, again, another fight I want both sides. I hate saying that, but you kind of have to in this spot because it's a 5-rounder, high variance, high output, and really high ceilings for both sides. And speaking of variance, I mean, we can't go through this card without talking about Derek the Black Beast Lewis. You guys know my rule number 1, don't bet against Derek Lewis. And this is a spot where the rule might not apply because I said don't bet against Derek Lewis. This when you're not betting against him, you're rostering against him. It's a really weird spot. I don't know what I'm going to get there too, but let's break this down real quick. Of course, the simple explanation is you have 2 power punchers going at it. Every time Derek Lewis is fighting, the fight could be ended in instants. And whereas he's facing a bigger, taller, rangier guy, I do think someone's going down. 4 fights in the UFC for Pavlovich, all of them ending in the first round by KO, TKO. I think that happens once again. Of course, high variance because he's going to have probably the speed advantage, the range advantage, the height advantage. But does he have the power advantage? I don't know. Derek Lewis has been knocked out 6 times. I wouldn't be surprised if he get knocked out here again, but I do think that every time he touches the pretty hittable Sergey Pavlovich, that he has a chance to go down. I'm rostering one of each side here just because I do think that there is high variance in the spots, a heavyweight spot. but I'm leaning towards Derek Lewis. I mean, a lot of money is coming on Pavlovich. I get it if you want to take the rangier, taller guy, but Derek Lewis finds a way to win these fights. It's Derek Lewis, most knockouts in UFC history. It sounds corny, but he finds a way to go out there and touch the chin, and he's facing a more inexperienced guy, a guy that may be tentative of his power, and a guy who has been finished before. I would not be surprised if Derek Lewis adds to that tally and gets another knockout this weekend. With that being said, this is another fight I want both sides on because Sergey Pavlovich has the ability to go out there and add another finished loss to the resume of Derek Lewis. That being said, it's in Texas. There are a lot of holes in Pavlovich's game. However, one of these guys is going down, and therefore you want one of these guys in your lineup. All right, enough saying playing both sides. Let's pick a fighter. Let's put our foot down on it. And there's no better way to do that than taking Dontel Mays against the UFC newcomer Hamdy this weekend. Hamdy's a guy who's 3-0, very questionable competition, hasn't really shown anything. I mean, he's a guy who's gotten early finishes. Of course, he has that wrestling background, but has never fought anybody remotely good. He fought a pair. And no, not like two, he fought an actual pair. So that experience, striking, size advantage is the reason I'm really liking Dontel Mays this weekend. 8.5K is a fighter I'm really looking to roster in all my lineups. The line is inflating more and more as we speak because people are realizing that this Hamdy guy is kind of a fraud. 3 fights, and sure, 3-0. Good job, you did what you're supposed to do, but 3 fights against such low-level competition? This is going to be his very first test. Of course, Hamdy has that wrestling upside. He has a wrestling background, but he doesn't show that I have the most control time, no submission game, no striking defense, a lot of striking that leaves to be desired, and the cardio needs to be worked on as well. So many holes in Hamdy's game. The one thing he does have is that wrestling, where I do think that Dontel Mays is big enough to fend off those takedowns. Instead, on the Mays side, we have the bigger guy, the taller guy, the more experienced guy, the guy with a striking edge, the guy with a grappling edge, and so much more. 8.5K I truly think is a steal because I really think that we have another Askar Mozarov situation. We have the guy in Dontel Mays who has the ability to go out there and expose what we think it could be a fraud in Hamdy, and at 8.5K, that ceiling is immense. I'm taking some Dontel Mays, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I really like him this week in all formats. All right, let's get ourselves a risky dog this weekend. Rafael Alves, 7.2K. This man is a finished machine. He's facing the uber talented Drew Dober, who seems to be really tough, but it's hard to be tough when you're facing a guy like Rafael Alves. Insane power, great hooks, and a great submission game. Drew Dober's been finished 4 times by submission, and I do think that this is one where that could potentially be exposed once again. Alves is just super explosive, shot out of a cannon, goes out there, has these great arms for a guillotine, great grappling transitions, and insane power on the feet. Of course, I'm going to give the striking edge to Drew Dober, but I do think that Alves has the ability to go out there and mix it up. I think that if Dober does decide to shoot in for a takedown, that's trouble for him. I do give Alves the advantage there. And we look at the size and the physicality edge, and I'm going to give that to Alves as well. I think at 7.2K, you're getting this great edge on the market, and I do think that he has a much better chance than the line does entail. I really like Rafael Alves as a dog, and his ceiling is super high. However, be wary of his floor because the power of Drew Dober is no joke. All right, some cash plays. First things first, most expensive fighter on the slate, we have Michael Morales, and I do think that he is a good option. 9.5K, really expensive, but I truly think he's a better fighter in this spot and a guy who has a really good chance of winning this. Fugitt coming in at short notice, and sure, he may have a decent grappling edge and maybe a decent promising future in the UFC, but he's not going to have the physicality edge. I don't think he's going to have the grappling advantage, and especially he's not going to have that technicality on the feet. The better striker, more technical striker, more powerful striker is going to be Michael Morales, and I do think he has the ability to go out there and shut the lights out of Fugitt this weekend. He's minus 600 for a reason. He's young, he's talented, he's got a good eye for the sport, and at 13-0, I do think he goes out there and improves his undefeated record. Sure, the price tag may be steep, but when you're looking for a cash player, you're looking for a guy who's going to win, and I do think that this guy wins pretty comfortably this weekend. Another cash play for me, though, is going to be Alexander Pantoja. I say cash because although his ceiling's high, I do think his floor is also really high in this spot. I think the win condition for his opponent, Perez, is probably a lay and pray decision win. Pantoja is tough enough to withstand the bombs on the feet and will definitely have the grappling edge in my opinion, so I do think he's able to go out there and put up enough points to be viable in cash lineups. His upside though in GPP formats is that submission, is that striking edge. I do think that Alexander Perez, despite being a decent wrestler, puts himself in a lot of bad grappling transitions. This is a spot where I really think Pantoja can take advantage of. On the feet, I also think that Pantoja is the better fighter, the better minute winner. And I do think that he's overall better, well-rounded fighter. Of course, there's always the risk of him being laid on, but at 8.7K, I do think he has the submission to fend it off and keep his own on the feet enough to win a decision and score decent for us on DraftKings. All right, one last and final dog before I wrap up the rest of the card. We're taking Negumereanu. Nick is facing another questionable fighter, another guy with a questionable record, a guy with a questionable fraudulent record in Potieria. Potieria 20-2, coming from the Ukrainian fight scene, and a great record, great power, but against who? His records have an insanely awful combined record, does not look very good, and even at that, has 2 losses on there. We have never seen him drag into deep waters. We have never seen him fight UFC level of competition. And where Nick maybe not stellar, he is UFC level. What you do have in a guy in Eeyore is a guy with a ton of power. Not the most technical striker, but a powerful, quick one who relies on that early finish and has seen to have cardio issues in the past. That being said, it is so hard to get an early finish against a guy with a brick for a head like Negumereanu has. Nick is super tough, has the ability to go out there, withstand the early onslaught, and I think will have the grappling and wrestling edge in this spot here. I even think he may have the cardio edge and a decent enough striking to keep it close at least. I think that either way that this fight score is pretty decent, but at 7.8k, you're getting a dog in Nick Negumereanu who has a decent floor because he is so durable and has that grappling and takedown upside, especially that control time against the cage, to put up a decent score. At the time of filming this, the line has flipped. Negumereanu is now the favorite, so you're getting a favorite at dog odds. I kind of like him this weekend to go out there and put up a grimy, grinding win, probably a 3rd round finish, let's say that, because he goes out there, pushes him against the cage, wears on him until he's able to find that finish. I like Negumereanu this weekend to expose another fraudulent record on the UFC 277 card. I lied. I gotta talk about the Moreno France fight first. I mean, this is a really fun one. 2 guys with really good striking ability, great durability as well, and they're just fun fighters. 125er, they have so much speed, so much technicality, and where I do think it's to be a fun scrap, I do lean more towards Moreno's side. He has the grappling upside, he has the takedown upside. No matter how good the takedown defense of France has looked, Brandon Moreno was a champ. He was the best in the world for a reason. I do think he has a good grappling edge here, but even on the feet, I don't think the striking is that night and day. Yes, France is fast, he's snappy, he's quick, but you got the Mexican toughness in Brandon Moreno who will stay in your face, throw things back, throw a lot of volume, and has great cardio in doing so. Moreno won the first fight. I do think goes out there is able to win a second one and win that interim belt. 8.9k though, I don't see a finish happening too often, especially early on, so it's really hard for me to get to him over the likes of Cosce, over the likes of Pantoja, but I do think over a 5-round fight, he has the ability to go out there and put up 10x value, so I will have some ownership on him, but he's definitely the side I'm taking in the co-main event. All right, now let's round out the rest of the card. First things first, Ankalaev versus Smith. Ankalaev is a huge favorite. We can see why, but I have a soft spot for Lionheart Smith. I think I'm gonna have more Lionheart Smith than Ankalaev. Sure, Ankalaev may be decent in cash, but Smith's win condition is a finish here. I think he's gotta go out there. I don't think he's a better minute winner. I think he may be I think he's definitely the better fighter at fighting through adversity, and I think he has the ability to go out there, make it dirty, grapple him, put him in transitions he's never seen before, and really just test to see what Ankalaev has. It's gonna be a fun fight, but at 6.8k with that ceiling and that win condition and that value you're getting, I do think it's a decent spot for him. I'm kind of leaning towards the Anthony Smith side. Close versus Garcia, I see a close decision. I do think he has the cardio advantage, the power advantage, the technicality advantage, and the takedown defense to keep it up on the feet the whole time. I think it goes to decision though, so it's not one I'm running to roster, especially at that price tag of close. More so the dog may have more value because his win conditions probably either finding that chin or getting some grappling success. But with the cardio and the power edge that I am going to give to close, I do think he edges a decision and therefore not too appealing of a fight. Semelsberger versus Moreno is a weird one for me. I do think that Semi the Jetty has power, has a good technicality in the striking department. Moreno's tricky. He has the ability to go out there and put out a lot of volume, make a lot of contact, rack up the significant strikes, and probably win minutes in the spot. Where it gets even trickier is that ground game for Moreno. I do think it's a decent ground game advantage. I think he has takedown upside, but I do think that Semi the Jetty is the better technical striker, and I think he has more ability to go out there and get a finish. I think the more finishing equity ends on the Semi the Jetty side. I do think he's a decent spot. However, I think there's better options. 8.6k, I mean, he's sandwiched between Pantoja and Mays and even up higher at Cosce and Mays. So it's a tough one for me to really get to over other fighters in the price range. But I do think that he has a decent ceiling and a decent floor, but I do think he hits his floor more than his ceiling, if you know what I mean. I do think he wins a decision more likely than a finish. However, the finish is still on the table. A lot of words, all for me to say that they're better fights to target, but I am picking Semi the Jetty to win this fight. Last but not least, we have the Kims versus Edwards fight. Not one I'm really running to roster. I think Kim has volume, but neither of them really have takedown upside. So not one I'm really running to target either. Again, on the other side of that Lewis fight, so it's even harder to get to. I just can't really make too much of an excuse to get to them. However, I am leaning the dog and Kim with all that volume. That's gonna do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys got some insight to what I'm playing this weekend. Pay-per-view card, I'm looking to do well. I'm looking to bounce back because there's been some tricky cards, some 50-50 fights I've gotten wrong, and I admit to that. I'm here to get better, and hopefully I help you guys make some money this weekend. In terms of other content I'm doing, hopefully I get this out Thursday night. That's the goal. As well as a big money bets, a live stream I'm doing with Mr. ErikBetsFights on his channel. I will also link that down below. Of course, did the Pup Sport Radio Breakdown like I do every single Wednesday. And I have that brand new Dana White Contender Show. A lot of content. Let's go over that one more time. Dana White Contender Show, this DFS breakdown like I do every week, the DFS breakdown on Pub Sports Radio, the best bets video. Sometimes I do a nice little fight breakdown with LiamPicksFights, Wiz Bets, and Lou Betcha, the four horsemen. But again, lots of content. Of course, if you don't want to watch any of that, I'm not going to make you. So you can DM me on Twitter at GamblesGordo. That's where I'll post all my plays, and you can feel free to ask any questions you may have. But with that though, that wraps up the entire full card DFS breakdown for UFC 277. Before you leave, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, because there's a lot more content coming. I hope you guys enjoyed. And with that, let's make some money, guys. Ding.